Hey, everybody. We're going to touch a little bit more on the constitutional powers and structures of the federal government that is created uh, with the Constitution of the United States. Obviously, this is probably something that you got pretty heavy in government class your senior year of high school, but it never hurts to just kind of touch base on it again. Keep this as short as we can. So ultimately, what is the Constitution and what is it? Why is it important to your life? Well, ultimately, the Constitution is the divine law of the land, the supreme law of the land. Is what spells out what the government can do and what the government can't do, and what rights you have and what rights the government has. And so we get back into that idea of John Locke and limited government, right? And why is it important in your life? It provides you certain protections from government overreach, right? Constitution, supreme law of the land, creates the federal government. It splits the powers between the federal side of the government and the state side of the government. Um, Most people associate, the government with Washington, D.C., when in reality, most of your life is affected by what happens in your state capital. Okay, principles that are defined in the Constitution and agreed upon by the early 13 colonies, and then every colony there, every territory that joins the Union after that is this idea of popular sovereignty, that ultimately the power of the government resides in the people. We, the people of the United States, right? We, the people, is where the power of the government comes from. We have limited government. Government is not all powerful. It can't. It can't. It can only do what the people decide that it has the power to do. Um, as over the past, I don't know, over the past 60, 70, 80 years, we've seen the power of the federal government grow. Eventually it's going to have to hit a stopping point, and have some kind of reduction. But you do have limited government in the United States. The government can't come into your house. The government can't prevent you from, publishing uh, negative stories that are truthful. Separation of powers, right? It's in the past we've seen, the each branch of the government has a check and a balance on the power of the others. And so we'll talk about that. This is supposed to keep, the executive branch from growing too powerful, of the legislative branch from growing too powerful. We have periods in American history in which the Congress is really where the legislative branch is really where the power lays in the country. And then today, we've gone through a series of stronger presidents. And then we have federalism, where we divide power between the states and the federal government. We have powers that are specifically designed for the federal government, and then we have powers that are set aside specifically for states. And then you also have areas where both levels of government have some sort of power over the lives of the people. So in the notes I give you, I don't think you actually get this um, graphic, but we can see let me see if I can, here we have the executive branch here, we have the judicial branch down here, we have the legislative branch, and each one has some kind of a check and a balance over the other, right? The government, the executive branch, the president has the ability to grant pardons and to appoint judges. So those are two of the powers that the executive branch has over the judicial branch, right? However, the um, the Congress gets to decide those appointments of judges. They get to confirm or deny those, right? And we have that. There's really no check on pardons. But you have that. The judicial branch gets to interpret laws and presidential actions and make sure that they're constitutional. And the judges that are appointed by the president serve for life, and so they're not necessarily tied to them politically. They can disagree with the president um, if the president's actions are unlawful, right? So we have that. The judicial branch can, you know, rule an executive order unlawful. All right. The executive branch powers over the legislative branch. The president can call a special session of Congress. The president is the commander in chief of the military, and he has the power to, or he or she, I'm sorry, historically he, but he or she would have the power to veto bills that are passed by Congress, right? Congress can approve presidential appointments. They have the authority to bring impeachment hearings against the president. We've seen that twice um, in your lifetime, three times in my lifetime. The power to override presidential vetoes with two-thirds majority. Um, Congress controls the spending, which is interesting. It's 2025 when we're filming this, and so like we're seeing a fight over that in the court systems. Of all right, Congress has designed X amount of dollars to go to this program, and then the government decides that, or the president has decided that they don't want to defund that program, and so they're trying to pull back that money. Is that constitutional? Well, the courts will decide on that. Um, the legislative branch has the right to ratify treaties and to declare war. Um, that the legislative branch has the power to create new courts. They have the authority to impeach justices of the Supreme Court, and they appoint justices that are made by the president. They approve or deny, and ultimately the check and power that the judicial branch has over the legislative is that they interpret laws and they can determine the constitutionality of those laws, and that the judges in the Supreme Court or on the federal level serve for a lifetime appointment, right? So why do we need this Constitution? Obviously, we talked about that in Chapter 7. The Articles of Confederation was the original government of the original government frame of the United States. But ultimately, you created the government that was too weak. There was no separation of powers. There was just the legislative branch. Congress didn't have the power to tax. And if a government can't raise money and fund programs, then what's the point of following what they say to do, right? You had to have all 13 states agree to make a permanent change to the Articles of Confederation, and nine of the 13 states had to agree for a law. And that threshold is just too high, right? Congress couldn't regulate trade. It causes competition between states, and so we have lots of those problems. The biggest problem that shows up is Shays' Rebellion, which we talked about in Chapter 7, right? When the farmers of Massachusetts rebel against the government, and the government of Massachusetts isn't able to respond with a national force to put down this rebellion, right? The governor's actually forced to hire a private militia, and so we go from there. And so we get together, we're gonna try to rewrite the Articles of Confederation. Ultimately, we're going to just throw it out. We're going to create a new constitution. Well, how are we going to put all these different ideas together from different states? And ultimately, we're going to have to compromise, right? What's representation going to look like in this new government? Well, the Virginia plan gets together, and Virginia is the most powerful, largest state at that point, right? And so they call for a separation of powers. They want a bicameral legislature, which is based on population. So they want a two-house Congress, basically, and they want both houses based on population. And they want more power put in the federal government. Well, that's going to upset a state like New Jersey, which has a smaller population. And then, like, look, the big states are just going to kind of run ramshot over everybody else. And so New Jersey creates this plan of a unicameral legislature where you have one house, and each house is going to receive equal representation based on the fact that it's a state, right? And so ultimately, we have the Great Compromise. Or the Connecticut plan that is going to create that bicameral legislature with a House of Representatives based on population and the Senate based on equal representation on all states. Other compromises that we see during this time frame are going to be the three-fifths clause, which is going to deal with a representation in Congress of I'm not going to say of enslaved people, but should the enslaved count towards the population of the state? Slave owning states say yes. Like Virginia, they're going to argue that they have this burden to take care of of their enslaved, and non-slave holding states are going to argue that hey, If you're not going to give these people political rights, then why should they have representation? The compromises meant that three-fifths of the slave population would count towards representation. Um, that's kind of famous in American history, right? Like the three-fifths compromise. Actually, where this comes from, though, is when states are paying off war debt from the War of the American Revolution. The three-fifths value was placed on the enslaved for populations for the amount of debt that slave states own. So, um, they would pay for additional war debts based on their slave populations uh, of three-fifths towards that population. All right. Federalists and anti-federalists. The Federalists are the people that are going to support the Constitution and want a stronger central government. These are typically going to be the wealthiest uh, landowning individuals in the American government. People like Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, John Jay, and they're going to write newspaper articles or pamphlets that are going to eventually be collected and be called the Federalist Papers. But basically, they're just going to argue for the establishment of a strong central government under the Constitution. People that want to remain with the Articles of Confederation are going to be called anti-federalists. They're going to support a smaller, weaker central government, and they want different things. Sam Adams, Patrick Henry, ultimately Thomas Jefferson is going to be a anti-federalist as well, although he's over in France during this time, right? The structure of the Constitution, pretty straightforward. You have the preamble that we've all had to learn in in grade school, right? It talks about the we the people in order to form a more perfect union, and all those things. We have the articles that lay out the structure of the government, and then probably the most famous part of the Constitution is the amendments that are going to follow, and those are the rights of the people, right? Article 1 deals with the legislative branch. It's going to talk about the fact that we have a bicameral House in which the Senate has two senators from each state, and then we have the House of Representatives that's based on population. Representatives serve for 2 years, senators serve for a term of six. And they have explicit powers that, such as they can make laws, set taxes, declare war, override vetoes. They can borrow money, they can print money, and they can trade um, um, they can regulate international and national trade. So those are the express powers. There's also going to be clauses like the implied powers, like the necessary and proper clause that gives Congress the power to pass laws that are necessary and proper given um, the expl- uh, the um, the express powers. Article 2 deals with the executive branch. It's the smallest of all the articles. Talks about that we have a president and a four-year president. They're elected for four-year terms. Qualifications, you have to be at least 35 years old. You have to be a resident of the United States for 14 years, and you have to be a natural born citizen. It also talks about the Electoral College as ways of elections. The important powers that are given to the president are that he's the commander in chief of the military. He can grant pardons, he can make treaties, he can appoint federal officers, and the ultimate goal of the executive branch is to uh, enforce laws, execute laws. He decides what laws are going to be taken care of and which ones are not. We have the judicial branch, which is going to create the court systems, right? The Supreme Court judges are going to serve for life unless they're impeached or removed or resign. And judicial powers rest with the United States Supreme Court and other courts that are created with Congress, right? Um, when the Supreme Court is originally created, it has very little power. In fact, the justices were more or less just regular federal judges. They actually had a an area that they oversaw cases in. It's not until 1803 in the court case of Marbury versus Madison that the idea of judicial review comes about and the power to rule a law or an action of government unconstitutional is given to the Supreme Court. All right, other articles. The fifth discusses how amendments are passed. Right, amendments are proposed by the House and the Senate with a two-thirds vote, and then it has to be ratified by three-fourths of the state. Um, or amendments can be proposed with two-thirds of the state, and then three-fourths of Congress has to approve them. Federal power, you have the supremacy clause in which the federal law is supreme to state laws, right? And then we get into the amendments. The first 10 amendments are written as the Bill of Rights. Number one, you have freedom of speech, religion, press, the right to assemble and to petition. Number two, you have the right to bear arms. Number three is no quartering of soldiers. Number four is no unreasonable searches and seizures. Five is due process and no double jeopardy, which means you can't be tried for the same crime twice. The right to a fair and speedy trial, right? Right to trial by jury, no excessive bails or cruel or unusual punishments. Um, Number four says there's basically other rights that aren't written into the Constitution, and all rights are not given to the federal government belong to those people or the states. And so we have these ideas. And so these ten bills that come from the original Bill of Rights, you can kind of see that they're going to mirror some of the English Bill of Rights and um, the Petition of Rights from England. They're also going to deal with um, the overreaches of England during that colonial period and what the founding fathers or the framers of the Constitution are going to see as the most important elements of government. So we'll go there. Hopefully that gave you a little bit more information on that and you learned something. And we'll be back with chapter 8 later. So have a great day and we'll see you. Bye.